You have two composers for your film. I'm Frank Elfman and James Griffith. Why do you need two?
They are guys that like to work together. Frank Elfman is a pretty renowned composer. He did a movie called Big Bad Wolves that won in Cannes a couple years ago. He's a very busy guy, so he's got a protege named James Griffiths, and they're really good friends, and they like to work together. And I think Frank was like simultaneously doing another picture. Sorry, I'm just going to keep going, even if I hear sound. You know, I'm so used to making movies that when I hear sound, I'm like, okay, cut, action, cut, right? sorry. So they said, we contacted Frank, and he said, look, I'd like to bring my partner James in on this as well. And I said, okay, great. And you know what's crazy is they live in London, I'm in Los Angeles. I had one Skype call with them, sort of discussed the types of sounds I was looking for, but ultimately as a director, my job is to find the people that I think are going to be the best at it and let them do what they need to do. So these guys would send me pieces from London, and I would download them and maybe give them a note or two, and they would turn it around and send it back to me. We would drop it into the movie and see how it played. And I never met either of them until the movie was completely finished.
That's strange. Who introduced you to them to you?
Yeah, my producer is named Travis Stevens. He has a company called Snowfort Pictures. They did like Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary, and We Are Still Here. They've done about 20 movies. So Travis had a lot of relationships with composers, filmmakers, all the different crew members, and he recommended Frank to me, and I listened to some of Frank's stuff, and I thought it was great. And what was good is you listen to a composer, and if they can do, the movies all sound like they belong to those movies. That's what I was looking for. Right now, the big thing especially for low-budget genre films, is the retro synth, like the John Carpenter style. And my movie, I feel, is a little bit more organic than that. I was like, I don't mind using synthesizers, but I don't want that retro synth sound. I want like real instruments, like guitars and things like that in there to give it the feeling of humanity that I was looking for. And so they incorporated guitars and different types of things to their synthetics. I was just like, just don't go retro.
And did you give them some basic guidelines, just like with the instruments?
Yeah, we talked about like just the kind of things that I was looking for. And when you edit a movie together, usually what you'll do is you'll use a temp track. So you'll find things from other movies that sort of evoke the feelings that you want, so that they at least have some level of guidance when they watch it. And after they saw it, I would say, what, we put in music from, Cliff Martinez's Neon Demon here, but that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's a little bit more like this. But the idea was to sort of go, here are some samples that we dropped in there as a guidance, and here are the tones that I like and the things that I want you to avoid, but beyond that, you're free to be as creative and to bring what you have to the table. And I think the score is really good. It's on Varese Sarabande, and I was listening to it on Spotify the other day, and I was like, you know what? Even without the movie, I think that this is some great music. So I was very pleased with them.
When did they start composing? Did you give him maybe the script?
No, until we didn't actually even approach them until we had a pretty tight assembly of the edit of the movie. So we were able to send them the movie, and they were able to see it, and it was very quick. They were incredibly quick. But low budget movies are like that. If you say, hey, let's get you on and have you start working when you read the script, then they might write some music in there. It could be a lot more back and forth, and they might want to change it. But it's easier if you're like, here's the movie, but I need you to do this quickly. There's less changing. So we waited until the movie was almost, the picture was locked before we even sent it to go out and look for composers.
You have also about 9 songs in the films. Was it hard to get all the rights?
It's so hard, and it's not so much hard, it's expensive. It's incredibly expensive, and we had a budget for the music that we needed to buy, and all of it went to the song Pop Music. Have you seen the movie? All right, so we have this scene where they acknowledge the song, they sing along to it, and all these things. Every time you do that, you're like, oh, it's 45 seconds, it's going to cost you that much. Oh, they're going to sing along to it? Oh, yeah, now it's going to cost you more. So that was a very important scene in the movie, and so all of our money went to that. And then the other songs had to be like friends that I knew that were in bands that would give them to me for free. There's one song by an Australian sort of a gross rap group from Australia when they do the torture scene in the trailer, and I love that song. I wanted it, but I knew that I'd be able to get it for very little from these guys. And when we shot the scene, I actually had like a radio, and I played the song so that they could all like feel what it was going to be, and they were going to go crazy, and we edited it to that song. But things like the end credits song, I originally had a song by the band TSOL. They're a punk rock band from Los Angeles who were pretty big in the 80s and 90s. And they came back, and what they wanted was so outrageously expensive that, you know, we had to get rid of it, and we've got a friend of a friend of a friend had a band, and we used that song. So,
You are a director, you are a screenwriter, an actor. What do you like the most?
Directing, hands down. Hands down, because it's funny when you're an actor, somebody says do this, do that, and when you're a writer, you sit alone in a room by yourself and you write and you write and you pour yourself into it. It takes a long time, and then you hand it to somebody. Within a day, they read it and they're like, "Here's what's wrong with it. Here's what you need to do." But when you're the director, people go, well, how should I do this? And, you know, of course, like, you know, it's better to be the guy that tells someone how to do it than being the person that's being told what to do. But I always just wanted to be a filmmaker. That's how I accidentally ended up being an actor. I went to go do a story on trauma and wanted to be an extra. And they liked me so much that they just kept calling me back and calling me back and calling me back. And they gave me a big role in this movie. And then people saw that and they started to ask me to be in movies. As far as the writing thing goes, I would write a script and be like, I want to direct this movie. And I would take it around and say, I'd like to direct this movie. And they would be like, we love this script. It's really good. We want it. But we don't know you as a director. And so we'll pay you for the script, but we're not going to hire you to direct. I mean, I have a wife and children, and so I said, hey, I need money. So I'd sell the script, and someone else would make it, and then I would write another one, and I would go, I would really like to make this movie. And they'd be like, well, we love the script, and we'll buy it, but we don't want to hire you to direct. And then it got to the point where people would be like, we've read your scripts, and we'd like to hire you to write a script. And so then that's how I ended up writing so many movies. But the plan the entire time was to direct a movie. It just takes a lot longer to convince someone that you're able to do that job, you know.
How did you came across Brian Smith's original story, and what was his involvement in the movie making?
Brian is I read novels all the time. I'm crazy for reading, and I had read one of Brian's novels years ago, and said, oh, I kind of like this. So then I started reading everything he had written. And it got to the point where I'd read all of his books, and then he started to self-publish on Amazon because his books are a little edgy and weird, and a big publisher doesn't even want to get involved. So he self-published this book, 68 Kill. And his other books are more straight horror. I think they're translated in German. Some of his books are available here in Germany. But this one was the first one that was sort of like more a crime type of a thing, which is my love. And I knew that he didn't have any representation, and he didn't have a publisher, so I contacted him directly. I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who had his email. And I contacted him and said, I'd like to make a movie out of this book. And I think that he had other people maybe come to him, and a lot of these authors, 99 times out of 100, they're never going to make the movie. So he was like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, you can make a movie of my book, not thinking it was going to happen. And as the things went on, I just, and I never met him. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and I live in Los Angeles, and I never talked to him on the phone, all emails. He's a writer, I'm a writer, so we were able to communicate better via writing. And I gave him a little bit of money, and I went out and I adapted the script, and I showed it to him, and he really liked it. And he still thought, well, that's just writing a script. You can do that for free. And then it would start to be like, guess what? I've got Matthew Gray Gubler. Really? Yeah, I do. You know, now we're going to try to get a little bit more money for this thing. And I think he sort of doubted it for the longest time. And then once it started to go and we were actually shooting, he was like, I can't believe we're doing this. And the first time we met was at the world premiere at South by Southwest. He came out, and that was the first time that we like shook hands and talked to each other. And he loves the movie. Okay. Yeah.
What appealed to you in that story?
It was sexy, it was violent, it was, the book isn't so funny, but because of the way my brain works, I found it to be funny, and I saw how it fit. I've been a fan of his books, and when I read it, I said, it's the kind of movie that I would like to make. I think that I could pull this off, like for a small budget. I think I could figure out how to do this. And I mean, I grew up, my father is a coal miner, my grandfather is a tool maker, like, you know, it's a blue collar. And blue collar, I mean, we're workers, we're, manual labor. And Brian is also from the same area. So I felt like, oh, I understand this. I understand these people. I know people that would kill someone for $68,000. I understand poor people. I understand this. So it just spoke to me. I was like, yeah. And I think that the themes of like trying to do things for the woman that you love and, you know, trying to get tough and everything weren't necessarily themes that were in the book. That was sort of my personal sort of spin on the book, which is much more sort of action-oriented. So.
For those people who don't know the original story, what major changes did you make?
Well, it was important to me that the people who are fans of the book would be able to see the movie and still be surprised. And that hopefully if people watch the movie and they like enough to read the book, that it'll still feel like a new experience. But, some of the big one would be that that Liza, his girlfriend, and the brother disappear halfway through the book. When he drives away from their place, they never come back again. And that works for a book. You can do all kinds you can get more experimental with the format, with the book. But with the movie, the first time I wrote the script, I just took the book and adapted it. And then when I looked at the script, I was like, there's something not satisfying about this that worked in the book, but it doesn't work in the movie. So I was like, well, what if I bring these characters back? We can't just leave a storyline like sort of dangling like that. We need to tie it all up. Movies are about they need to be sort of tied up at the end. So there was that. Violet was a little bit more like the other girls. The middle girl that he falls in love with was just another kind of manipulative, tough, mean, violent woman. And I sort of wanted to make this about a guy trying to find love. And so she changed. You know, there's a scene in the convenience store where he has to perform cunnilingus. Can I say that on the radio? I don't even know. Where he has to orally please the girl to get the information. And in the book, that wasn't it. The girl orally pleased him, and which is very much in line with the book. It's a little bit tougher and just meaner and manlier. So I would do things like flip that to make our guy a little bit more of a timid guy. And in the book, the dude Chip was like tougher and bigger and stronger and sexier and cooler, and I made him sort of like a little bit more nervous and timid because I thought it would be more interesting.
When I first saw your movie, I thought of Taylor Swift, because she always sings songs about past relationships, and this is maybe, I thought, a kind of a male answer to that.
You know, in many ways, that's what I was trying to do. The idea is that we always see these stories. If Chip were a woman and she had three dudes in her life, three men in her life that were sort of like abusive or manipulated him, or they've seen that story. We've all seen that story. Taylor Swift still tells that story all the time, right? So the interesting thing is to tell that same story, but to switch the genders, just to make it a little bit interesting and strange. It's something we haven't seen, It makes it funny. That's where the humor comes from, I feel like. If this was a movie about a woman who's trying to get tough by, deciding that she doesn't need men in her life, everybody would clap and say, oh, yes, and that's a drama. But I wanted to make a comedy. And so by having it be a guy that's the male Taylor Swift, all of a sudden it's kind of funny, right? It's interesting and it's different, so...
Let's talk a bit about your cast. You mentioned already Matthew Gray Gubler. And he's done some unusual movies like Trash Fire, Suburban Gothic, and so on. Why did you choose him for the part of Chip?
I'm a fan of this television show Criminal Minds, which I understand is also on in Deutschland. Yeah, and I really liked him. And here's the deal: is I knew that Chip, the character, is not the smartest guy in the world, and he makes some pretty dumb decisions. And so if he was Channing Tatum, somebody handsome, not that Gubler's not handsome, he's a very handsome man, but he's not lovable. I needed someone that I could just show him looking at a girl, and the audience would be like, "Aw, he's so lovable." And Gubler just has that lovability. Like, people like him. They meet him and they like him. So I knew that because this character does so many stupid things, that it had to be a person that we could just look at without him even saying anything, and we kind of like him. So that was like part of it, is I kept seeing him on Criminal Minds. And there he's a super smart guy, but he's still very lovable. And so I was like, maybe he could do super dumb, but also lovable. and it works, I think,
Was he the first one you cast?
Yeah. He was the guy that I was like, you're the lead, you're in every scene in the movie, so I need to be able to build around you. And so he was the one that I really wanted. And once I met him for the first time, he, like you said, he does things like Excision or Trash Fire. He's a quirky, strange guy in real life. He likes these kind of movies and wanted to do it. And of course, he's a big star. This is a very low-budget movie, so you have to get the right people that actually understand the material, because it's not like I can say, look, I'm giving you $1 million, just do whatever I say. You have to be like, I don't have any money, but look at this cool movie we're going to make. And he was the right guy for that part. Yeah.
How did you see Chip?
It's weird. I see him like Gubler now. It's hard for me to even think about what I thought before there was Gubler, which is awesome. I think I've made movies where I've made them with certain actors, not as a director, but just as a producer, whatever. You see it and you go, oh, I'm still thinking about the other person that I originally thought about when I wrote it. But I don't even remember. Gubler just did such a good job of becoming Chip. And, a lot of it is in costume choices, with that shirt at the end, and we cut his hair and just do all these things to make him into the Chip that I saw. But that was it. He was a guy that's good looking, but not sexually threatening. And that was the thing. And in Hollywood, a lot of the actors are really good looking, and they're manly, and they're, Hugh Jackman. I mean, look at that guy. Guys I'm not even going to mess with. If this guy wanted to come and take my wife, he could, because he's so handsome and so manly and so rugged. So I knew that Chip just needed to have that different quality, lovable, timid quality.
Did he recommend Annelien McCord to you, since you worked with her before?
Actually, it was Ricky Bates, who is the director of Excision and Trash Fire, who's a friend of mine, and he knew that I had put Gubler in the movie, and so he asked if he could read the script, and I said, yeah, sure, we're friends. And I sent him the script, and he read it, and he said, who would be great for Liza is Annelien. And I was like, but Ricky, I don't want to be the guy that steals all of your actors. And he was like, no, she's perfect for this role, and she's going to love it, and you should really meet with her. And the minute I met with her, I was like, Ricky was right. Ricky was 100% right. So I did. I took 2 of Ricky's actors, but he and I are pals, so it's okay.
And how about your other cast? Did you steal actors too from other director friends?
Those were the only ones that I flat out stole. My producer Travis Stevens knew Sheila Vand, who played Monica, and so he brought her in for a meeting. And what's really interesting is she's an Iranian girl who is usually wearing a hijab, or she's a political analyst, and you know what I mean? Right, exactly. And she was like, "You're gonna let me play this sort of white, trashy, redneck, punk rock. Nobody ever gives me roles like this. And I was like, yeah, but I can see that you could do it. And so she loved the opportunity to play something that's very different from what she usually did. And Alicia Bowe, who plays Violet, was recommended by my casting. We got a casting person for a couple roles that were just, we didn't know what to do, and they were hard to fill. And Alicia she'd done a couple small TV roles in the States, but I met her and I was like, she's 19 years old, she's going to be a star. And while we were shooting 68 Kills, she landed the lead in this Netflix television show called 13 Reasons Why, which is like one of their biggest hits. So now she went from being the person that no one knew to being maybe the most famous person in my movie within a year. But as a director, I met her one time and was like, we got to hire her. She's going to be big. And I think she's going to be way bigger than she is now. And then maybe my movie will make money because 5 years from now, people are like, Alicia Bowe, let's go rent that movie.
Her character, Violet, is the only kind of a good or sane character. Although, like the other woman, she wants to kill people. And why does she have to die that way? No happy end.
Right. You know what? I think that she doesn't really want to kill anybody. She just tries to use that trick to make Chip stand up for himself, you know. So I don't think Violet would ever kill anybody. But fundamentally, I wanted to trick the audience. I wanted the audience to think, oh, he's going to fall in love with this girl and they're going to ride off into the sunset. But then there's a moment where you're like, oh no, that girl stole all his money. And then right when you get mad at her, then we're like, oh my gosh. And that was the idea, was to constantly make the audience think this is what's going to happen. And then you don't do that. And then you go even more crazy than they think. And that's the idea, is just to do that. And you know, it's sad what happens to Violet, but in order to make a movie that maybe we don't expect, so I want to surprise and entertain. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to kill your babies.
The only sane person, I think, in the film is Clint. And he warns him, Chip, at the start. Why do you have him as the only sane character?
You know, in many ways, like, you're trying to set up, the book is different. You know, you're able to set it up and you're able to get inside Chip's head. And you can understand what he's thinking. You can't do that with a movie. So it's in the beginning of the movie, and we need to set up this world, and we need to kind of establish sort of like a theme, you know. And the best way to do that is to create a character that's not in the book and have him sort of be. It's any I'm the sage old guy who is going to come and like try to at least help you out, so that the audience knows this is your problem, so that he can try to solve it through the end. So yeah, Clint was just a guy I created to sort of like, you know, use him to kind of like, so the audience would understand what this Chip's journey was going to be, you know.
What kind of director are you? Can the actors improvise, or do you go by your script and that's it?
You know what, the best you can do is, some actors love to stick to the script and you let them. And some of them feel, you know, if they change it a little bit, but the idea is that the actors need to feel natural. They need to feel natural. And if you go, no, it's got to be like this, then they might get like too tense about it. And then they're thinking too hard about the words they're saying instead of the feeling of it. So people are free to kind of add, subtract, kind of do whatever they need to do to make it theirs. I don't have a problem with that. There's not times where I roll the camera, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Just make something up. It's never that kind of like a comedy improvised like I imagine a Will Ferrell movie would be, where they just keep rolling the camera and people are making stuff up. It wasn't like that. But as an actor, I understand that sometimes you need to like make it your own so that you can really live and be the character. And what's real that comes out of the face is going to sell more than your words 9 times out of 10. Like, you know, the emotions that they're sensing. The emotions that they're sensing are going to tell more to the audience than the words that they're saying.
When they drive to Dwayne's, you hear police sirens. Was it an accident? By chance, maybe?
You know, I think these sirens were added, but the police lights were there. You know, we shot in New Orleans, which is deep down in the south of America. It's a little bit crazier there. It's a little bit, a lot of the neighborhoods we were shooting in were a little like poor people, crime, things like that. And so, yeah, we happened to just be driving by and shooting some stuff, and there were cop cars. But there's cop cars everywhere with lights on there. Yeah. So.
The first time I saw your movie, I laughed when they are at Wayne's place, and Chip, she sees the head in the glass. And where do you think that comes from? And the second time I watched your film, I laughed when they are at the place where they burgle the people, and she cut the
guy's throat.
Yeah.
I think that humor is. Why is it that we laugh? You know what I mean? It must be in the way that I present it. This is the way I see it. Humor is like something where you're reacting to something that's kind of extreme. It makes you think about something, and to me, humor comes from, I can't believe what I just saw, or is that really real? I can't even believe this. It's less of a joke with a punchline. It's more about shocking people a little bit. When I ride on a roller coaster, I laugh. I laugh like crazy. Maybe that's because I'm a little bit scared of it too, and so to me, that's the sweetest spot that you want to try to get, where it's, should I be laughing? I shouldn't be laughing, and yet I am, and I'm laughing at something like terrible. Why am I doing this? And I don't know. That's a really good question, but they're both designed to kind of make you laugh because they're sort of shocking. And I think that's what, if you see something and you're like, wait, what did I just see? I have to laugh about that because that's crazy. And that's sort of what I'm trying to capture all the time with the violence. It's not torture violence. It's not sadistic. It's more shocking and humorous.
Was there a scene that was really hard to film?
In particular, there were things that were hard to film, but they weren't because of trying to find the emotional place. My actors are all good with that. A lot of that just has to do with technical things. There was a scene where after Dwayne's apartment, he decides he's going to hit Liza on the head and run away. And there's another guy, and there's some gunshots. And then another guy comes out, and there's gunshots. And then they're fighting. And not only that, but we would shoot, this was New Orleans, Louisiana, where everything will be fine, and then rain. All of a sudden it'll rain, and it'll rain, and it will rain like in torrents for hours. So that scene, we were supposed to shoot everything in one night, and instead we were only able to shoot a couple hours, and then we had to go away and shoot other stuff and then reschedule to bring people back to that location and sort of like finish the scene. Does that make sense? So we because of weather, that scene was very difficult because we were like, well, we shot this and this and this on the first night, and now here we are 2.5 weeks later, and is the costume right? Did that get right? Where were they here? And so you're trying to shoot one scene that you did two halves of like weeks apart. So doing those kind of things is very difficult. Doing anything like with cars, driving cars, mounting cameras on cars, even getting inside of a car with equipment and shoot is kind of difficult. But as far as like the emotional content of it, all my actors were really good, and I don't feel like there were any troublesome scenes.
What movie influenced you the most as a child, as a teenager?
As a child or a teenager, it's interesting. I grew up being a horror movie kid, and I'm a little bit older, so like when I was a kid, there were no VCRs. My parents would take me to the drive-in, and I would see like the Ray Harryhausen, Sinbad movies. And then when I got older, we finally got VHS, and I was able to see all the movies I really wanted to see, like Escape from New York and The Road Warrior, and these kind of things. As I got older, the things that more specifically influenced me, I think, for 68 Kill would be like, weirdly enough, like giallo movies, even though maybe you don't see it in the movie. But giallo movies, Quentin Tarantino, obviously, Taxi Driver. I remember the first time I saw that, I was working at a video store in high school, and I brought Taxi Driver home and didn't know anything about it, and I watched it, and my mind was blown. So, it started out with horror movies when I was a kid, and it moved into sort of like crime thrillers when I got a little bit older, and now, there's all kinds of influences in there. But, I totally stole a shot from Mario Bava and 68 Kill. No one noticed it, but it's totally there. I stole it from $5 for an August Moon. It's there's a scene where she smokes the cigarette, and it puts it in between her toes, and then the toes go down and she passes it to his mouth. And I saw that in an old Mario Bava movie from like 1972 called $5 for an August Moon, and I was like, I'm stealing that. But if you're going to steal, steal from things that people don't know about. That's